Welcome to the Wellness Esquire Podcast. I'm Ariella, and I'm so excited for you to listen to this conversation with Emily Logan Stedman. Emily is a commercial litigator and a partner at Hush Blackwell, and she's also become one of the most honest and impactful voices in the legal industry, talking about anxiety, burnout, perfectionism, and what it really takes to build a sustainable career in BigLaw without sacrificing your humanity. Emily is also the creator of the podcast, The Grace Period, and what she talks about on her podcast and on LinkedIn helps so many lawyers feel less alone. Emily and I talked about her journey to law, including how she chose it for herself even after growing up with two lawyer parents, and how her transition into BigLaw intensified her anxiety that she'd managed for years. We talked about imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and what it looks like to be a partner who's also just a human being, still making mistakes, still feeling things, and learning how to extend herself the same grace she gives everyone else. We talked about burnout, the warning signs she didn't recognize at first, and how therapy, mindfulness, and learning to ask for help changed everything. We also dug into the mindset shifts that helped her rewire her inner dialogue, especially the simple but powerful reminder that your thoughts are not facts. I loved this conversation with Emily because it's real, it's practical, and it's deeply honest. I know you're going to get so much value from it. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy. Yay! Hi, so nice to meet you.
You as well. Can you hear me all right?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep. Perfect.
Amazing. I am so excited to talk to you and really grateful for you taking the time to have this chat. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How are you feeling today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's definitely starting to be fall here in Milwaukee, which brings mixed emotions, but.
Okay. Mixed emotions in what way?
I love fall, but it means winter's around the corner.
I really understand what you mean there. I grew up on the East Coast, born in Boston, grew up in Connecticut. Really don't believe in cold.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually understand until I moved to California that I would actually develop anxiety in the fall in anticipation of winter coming, because I don't just dislike the cold. Cold caused me like severe pain. So it wasn't just like, oh, bummer. It was like, oh, here we go. Get ready for it. It's going to be awful. And I didn't even know that I was having an actual anxiety reaction until I stopped having it. Yeah. So I can relate in that regard. So I'm so thrilled to chat with you. I wanted to create the Wellness Esquire podcast to have the kinds of conversations that I was having with, lawyers that I was coming across who already were like, hey, lawyers are humans, our well-being matters. And so I felt like I'm having all these conversations that other people don't even know are available.
Yeah.
And I want to just kind of put a microphone in the room and expose to people to just all the ways to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And to share and highlight authentic and often vulnerable stories, and really to help people not feel alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
During COVID, I was hosting these chit chat check-ins for lawyers, and I would watch people come to life when they would hear someone else share their own version of the thing they thought they were the only person in the world who could possibly be experiencing that. And I would just watch their eyes change.
Yeah. And
I mean, what could happen if we could make, those kinds of experiences happen more often? So here we go. So thank you for being one of the people to show others, oh, it's not just you.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what you've just described is exactly why I do what I do. Because I felt alone and then realized, oh no, there's lots of us.
Right? It's incredible to recognize how unique our story is because we're unique individuals, and yet to understand at the same time that the foundation of what we're experiencing, it's really pretty normal.
Yeah.
It's not as unique as we think.
Yeah.
So I want to start a little bit earlier in your journey. So I know both of your parents were lawyers, so maybe this played a big role and it sounds like they might have already expected you to be a lawyer when you were born. But for you, what led you to law school in the first place?
That's a good question. So the easy answer is both my parents were attorneys. They expected me to be an attorney at age 10 or 12. I would have said, I'm going to be an attorney. And then through college and up to like taking the LSAT, I really had some doubts. Not that like law school wasn't an option, but was that really what I wanted, or was that what my parents wanted for me? And I learned about Teach for America in high school. I'm a product of K-12 public schools. My parents are big public school advocates. So I really aligned with the mission of Teach for America, and I knew I wanted to do TFA. So this was 2000. I graduated college in 2008. So I was applying in 2007. It was extremely competitive at that time to get into TFA. And so I wasn't sure I would get in. And I just said to myself, I'll take the LSAT and apply for TFA at the same time. And if I get into TFA, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go teach and take the time to make sure I'm going to law school because I want to, and not just because my parents want me to. I got into TFA. I still remember the day I got in and calling everyone and telling everyone I had gotten in. And I moved to Arizona to teach fifth grade. And I loved teaching fifth grade. I still think about it. It's been longer than I would like to admit since I taught fifth grade. But I loved teaching fifth grade. I loved the students. I loved giving back. I loved the project management of managing our days minute by minute. A lot of things that have served me well as an attorney. And then I realized I did not love Phoenix, Arizona. So if anyone's listening, I don't mean to offend you. The desert is not for me. And I thought, it's still the recession. This would have been around 2009, early 2010. I'll apply to law school. And if I hate it, I'll move home to Atlanta and teach. And I got into several law schools, ultimately picked the University of Mississippi, honestly, because I thought it would be a little easier and more fun than where I went to undergrad. And I remember the day I called and told my parents I was going to law school. And the rest is really history. I went to law school. I loved law school. And yeah, it really just was a ride from there.
So in a nutshell, can you share just like little snippets of what your legal career started out as, and then ultimately to what you're doing now? And then we'll get into how that's turned into the incredible well-being advocate that you are now.
Thank you. So I always wanted to litigate. Going into law school, I don't think I really understood that there were attorneys out there who didn't litigate and go to court. My mom was in that space as a family law and juvenile attorney turned juvenile court judge. My dad was in-house counsel for an insurance company. I could not have told you what he did day in and day out, like no clue. And my mom had clerked for a state court judge. So my mom went to law school after teaching for, I think, close to 10 years. I was born while she was in law school. So I remember her being a law clerk when she graduated. I remember her early days as an attorney. And I always thought working for a judge is what I want to do. And so that's what I pursued through law school. Thought I was going to clerk or become a bankruptcy attorney. So after my 2L year, I clerked for a bankruptcy judge in Jackson, Mississippi. Loved him, loved the experience. In bankruptcy court, I saw young attorneys from reputable firms in court, which was what I wanted to do. So I was like, this is it. This is for me. I ended up moving to Milwaukee randomly, completely on a whim, to clerk for a bankruptcy judge. She was then nominated by President Obama to move up to the district court, so the federal trial court. So I had a year and a half in bankruptcy court, a year and a half in the trial court at district court at the federal level. And in that second half of my clerkship, all it was civil cases. And so that's how I started getting just the general commercial litigation experience. And from that clerkship, I joined my first firm, ended up staying here in Milwaukee. And at that first firm, I was doing 50, maybe 40% bankruptcy, 60% general commercial litigation. Preferred the general commercial litigation work. That firm wanted me to keep doing bankruptcy work. I did not want to keep doing bankruptcy work, so I ended up looking for another firm, landed at Hush Blackwell, and since then, so for the last almost 5 years, I've been doing straight general commercial litigation.
So when you entered BigLaw, that created or led to just a different way of being a lawyer, of practicing. And so can you talk about the impact on your mental health, what that transition looked like, and how much you were or weren't even prepared for what was coming? You know, how thrown were you about how different this experience was going to be?
Yeah. So I've always been anxious. I've always been a worrier until entering BigLaw. That was something I could manage on my own. I had built these systems and outlets for myself, and it was a thing that I just sort of dealt with, and it didn't interfere with my day-to-day life. I knew going into BigLaw that there would be high expectations, both in the caliber and quality of work and how much you worked. That was part of why I wanted to clerk. When you do well in law school, BigLaw is sort of pushed on you. And I was always skeptical. I was like, this is a huge commitment. I don't know. And so clerking gave me time to talk to people who had done it and figure out, is this something I could do? So actually my co-clerk at the district court was a great resource on that. Ended up applying to 2 big firms in Milwaukee, and I knew it would be hard. I didn't know how much I would internalize the expectations and how much it would exacerbate the already high expectations I had on myself. So it's things like, as a law clerk, I had one boss, a single judge who had her own preferences that I could learn and work within. In a big firm, you have 9 bosses. In a big firm, all of us, in any firm in private practice, all of a sudden people are paying for your services, and they're paying a lot of money for your services. That's an added level of pressure. At my firm, they set me in an office next to someone who went to Harvard for undergrad and law school. He is now a dear, dear friend, but in the beginning, that was extremely intimidating. So there were just a ton of things that all of a sudden exacerbated my already existing anxiety and made it something that really started interfering with my work product, my mental health, my relationships. It probably didn't help, although it was a good thing that I met my husband at the same time as I was entering BigLaw. So I was navigating a lot, and I self-isolated a lot. So I was someone who would sit in my office and think, oh my God, yes, I'm a high achiever. Yes, all the evidence shows that I'm more than capable, but I'm not as capable as everyone around me. And I'm the only one struggling. I'm the only one making mistakes. I'm the only one doubting if I can cut it in BigLaw and make this my long-term career. And I'm the only one having a hard time. And I really convinced myself of that, which was an added layer of stress that I didn't need. And it was a colleague, another associate at my first firm, who came into my office one day fairly abruptly, was having a moment in tears, and shared with me what they were experiencing. And a light bulb went off. A weight was lifted. I knew, oh, it's not just me. Oh, it's not just me. And that gave me permission to start talking to that colleague about it, to start talking to my friends at other big firms about it, and ultimately to open up to my family about it. Because I'm 39, I'm an elder millennial. All of this was still something we weren't talking about, particularly in high achieving spaces. And looking back, hindsight's 2020. I probably experienced some of this in college, but didn't have the vocabulary or wherewithal to really express what it was and what I was experiencing. So
Do you have any idea what it was about the way you had been showing up to allow this colleague of yours to come in and start crying? Because they didn't know that you also were crying with, behind closed doors.
they did not, but I tried to be a generally warm, approachable, sort of normal person. And sometimes in the big law environments, that can come across as more casual, but I think it ultimately is more genuine. And that colleague and I had been through the ringer on a couple big cases together. So we had developed a friendship and had talked about it at least somewhat, maybe at a high level. And that must have been it. I mean, we were actually friends. I think that's the other thing is, I think big law has changed a lot. And there are a lot of myths around it. And even in the law generally, you'll hear people say you can't be friends with your colleagues. I don't believe that. You have to have a level of friendship to really dig in the trenches on some of your matters with other people. And so I think that helped with that colleague.
When you started opening up to colleagues and also to friends in your family, were there certain ways that those people had already shown up in your life that helped you realize, okay, these are going to be the first people I try this, vulnerability and openness out on, or things that when you did start speaking up that they did that helped you know, oh, that was safe. Okay, I can try that again. This was a good idea.
That's a good question. I think about two girlfriends, one who we graduated law school together and were law clerks at the same time, entering private practice at the same time. And I, probably started testing the waters with her a little bit. Like, have you experienced this? Have you experienced that? How did you deal with this? So you plant those seeds and then the ball gets rolling. And, to this day, she's not in private practice anymore, but we are always bouncing work and personal life things off each other. We were just doing it this weekend. Another is a woman here in Milwaukee, and we were associates sort of in the same vintage at different firms, and we ended up making partner at the same time. We actually bonded because we're both now married. At the time we're dating non-attorneys, and they worked second shift. So there were some complaints we were having around managing that in our relationships that we really just bonded over. And she is an open book and she's a go-getter, and I admire her. I learn a lot from her about when to stand up for myself and how to voice it. And so honestly, there was probably a level of this isn't hard for her, but because she was so open and candid, I knew I could talk to her about it. And so now the same, whenever we have something hard at work, we're bouncing it off each other. And I think that's critically important. That is part of my advice to people is have friends at other firms around your vintage who are going through the same things as you, so you can bounce ideas off. And you'll learn the grass isn't always greener, right? So you learn that, which can make you appreciate where you are, but you also learn where the grass is greener, and either you can bring those ideas back to your firm, or you can keep that on your list of places you might want to go if you ever make a move.
Because you had been so tight-lipped about what your actual experience was and what you were going through, when you started to tell people, what was their reaction? Were they shocked? Were they, less surprised? How did they, did you get the sense that they were just floored to hear that, this coming out of your mouth?
Yes, a lot of people were shocked because externally I fulfilled the stereotype that I thought other people were fulfilling in my mind, right? I had it all together. I was organized. I was meeting my husband, ultimately getting married, traveling here and there. And I just had it all together. I wasn't complaining to people, wasn't asking for help. So it was a huge shock. And actually at my first firm, one of the partners in leadership and sort of in a mentorship and advancement role for associates told me that straight up. I burst into tears in front of him pretty shockingly, and he was very surprised. I mean, few people knew how deeply I was struggling other than my now husband, I think, for a long, long time.
So what happened when you burst into tears in front of colleagues?
He was so kind, and months later, maybe a year later, I reached out to him after I'd changed firms and had run into him at an event and thanked him for his kindness and for, you know, managing the relationship in a way that, when we run into each other at events, it's normal. And I'm not a crier. I don't cry a lot. I do cry, and it's usually because I've kept it pinned up and something random happens and it bursts out of me. So I don't shame anyone for crying, and I've learned to tap into that honestly. And I think it makes me a better attorney because I can understand the stress and understand the emotional aspect of a lot of the pieces of litigation that cause such intense anxiety for my clients.
You mentioned asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever previously, before you started to open up in this way, did you ever ask for help before?
No.
Not really. Yeah. So, and then what allowed you to even recognize, oh, one of the things that I need to start doing in order to just keep my head above water is ask for help? It's one thing to just recognize that, hey, asking for help sounds like a good idea in theory. It's a whole other thing to actually start doing it, and to do it in a context in which you're already, going to likely be worried about, well, if I ask for help, will that make people think that I'm weak or incapable or, stupid or whatever it may be. All of these little voices that come into our heads, as generally wrong as they are, they're still there, or they may be. So how do you start asking for help when you've got all that going on? It's a lot of noise.
It's such a good question. I mean, for me, I essentially hit rock bottom and I had no choice but to ask for help. I'll say I did start therapy almost immediately upon entering BigLaw, and that helped a ton. Just having that neutral third party that I could talk to about twice a month, every other week. That helped. My husband would say, well, like, we're really hitting the edge of what I can help you with because I'm not an attorney. And so that would push me. And then realizing that every time I asked for help, everyone was happy to help. And so, I hope people don't feel like me. I know they do, that you can't ask for help. It's truly just about asking for help one time and seeing the reaction. And I tell associates, start early with this. It starts with asking your assistant for help. It starts with delegating to a paralegal for help. The non sort of life altering moments that we need help, and building up that muscle of asking for help, delegating work. It looked like me telling my husband, you love cooking. You're a great cook. You know what I like. Will you be in charge of dinners from here on out, right? It doesn't have to be this big life-altering ask. It can be something that small. And almost every time, everyone I've asked for help has been more than happy to do so.
Isn't that an incredible thing to process? I think, at least speaking for myself, I often worry that, because asking for help has never come naturally to me. I've been practicing it, still working really hard. And it took me a long time to realize really what you're saying. When someone asks me for help, generally my answer is yes, which I also have to work on to manage my own boundaries. Sure. But when I'm the one asking for help, I don't want to burden people.
You don't want to bother them. Yeah, all that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's that mix of what will they think about me in a negative way if I am asking them for help, if I'm indicating that I can't do everything by myself. Mm-hmm. And, that burden piece. And when we realize, we've got so much built up in our heads that is often just not the reality. And frankly, if that does turn into the reality and someone's pissed off at you for asking for help, that may also tell you something about the environment in which you're in and indicate, hey, maybe there's something, do I want to move? Am I in the wrong place anyways? That's useful feedback.
100%. And it sounds obvious, and I had probably heard it 100 times before it really clicked. But really thinking to myself about, would I talk to myself the way, would I talk to a friend the way I'm talking to myself? If a friend came to me and told me they were feeling what I'm feeling right now, what would they say? It wouldn't be what I'm telling myself. It would be, how can I help? Here's someone who can help you. You're not a failure. Like, here's all the evidence to show that you have it all together. And I have to remind myself of that constantly. My inner voice is critical and critical to a fault and very, very negative, even though outwardly I'm able to portray this like positive person. And so it's just constantly checking that. I also have to give a shout out to meditation. I was headed to Vegas for a bachelorette party, sitting in in an airport, thinking I can't cut off from work. I'm having all these negative thoughts. I need some help. I Googled, found the Headspace app. And at the time, so this would have been probably 2017 or 18, at the time, you had to go through a set of introductory lessons on Headspace before they would let you into the general library of meditations. And the biggest thing those introductory lessons told me were, your thoughts are not facts and you can let them just go by. You do not have to engage with them. And that was a transformative experience, to have the permission to recognize my thoughts, but allow them to move on, and to learn how to just feel them and not like pick them up and fight with them. And that was a way of me asking for help. It was just, a digital person speaking in my ear. But that has truly transformed my self-talk as well.
Wow. That's amazing. Can you talk more about you're a partner, and it's, I think, very easy for anyone to, look from the outside and see your partner, you've got status, I remember early on in my legal career not understanding what it meant to be a partner, and genuinely believing that part of what it meant was everything. And you're not going to make mistakes. You've got it all sorted out and you're going to be perfect. And, that's not true. And I've now, come to a point where I understand from experience that any kind of concern that I have, or experience that I have, I'm not the only one. So I'm sure there's someone else out there who thinks that, well, in order to become a partner, you have to know absolutely everything and you can never fail. So you and I know that's not true. Can you talk about, you're a partner and you've got this inner critic, you experience imposter syndrome, you have a really healthy perspective around that, which we can talk about too. You've done a lot of work around perfectionism, and you and I share, it sounds like a favorite book, The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control. So dig into that. At this stage that you're in, what do mistakes look like? What does your inner voice look like? How do you navigate the reality of being a human being who happens to also be a partner?
That's a good question. Honestly, it's really not that different from when I was an associate. So I've been a partner for 1 year and 8 months. I'm in my 2nd year of partner. And I think as a senior associate, when I transitioned to my current firm, Hush Blackwell, I gave myself permission to be fully and authentically myself. And I said to myself, that is clearly critically important. And I think another element of the anxiety that I think a lot of high achievers experience is we're checking boxes. We're doing what is expected of us. We rarely pause and say, is this what I want? And I had to get comfortable with acknowledging that both were true. Like I was checking those boxes of ambition in big firms, but it was also what I wanted. And that was a little weird to acknowledge that, like, yes, I'm an ambitious woman and this is what I want to do. And I need to be somewhere where I can be wholly myself. And I've been extremely fortunate that my firm is extremely supportive of that. But that doesn't mean that there aren't times where I'm not disappointing myself, disappointing a client, disappointing a colleague for whatever reason. And I try with all of that to, again, give myself permission to feel the disappointment and then work on that self-talk of reminding myself, what does the evidence show? The evidence shows that you've survived every mistake before. You've survived every disappointment that someone's told you about before. You're still achieving, right? No one's died. Like if it's really serious, I say I didn't miss a deadline. I didn't commit malpractice. No one died. Whatever I can to get myself back on track. But I think you have to give yourself permission to really feel those feelings and process them, or you won't be able to move on. And I try to model that for the associates that are coming up behind me and who I work with. So it's acknowledging mistakes and fixing them. It's acknowledging their mistakes and talking through how we don't have that happen again in the future. But it's also extending grace to those around me because that's what feels authentic to me. So it's trying to lower some of those perfectionist tendencies and recognize that no human is perfect, but we can still do really high quality work as our human selves who are going to make mistakes.
One of the most impactful lessons that I learned from the book I just referenced, The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control, was the distinction between a maladaptive perfectionist mindset and an adaptive one. Mm-hmm. Most of my life, I spent in the maladaptive state. Yeah. So I did a whole lot of beating myself up for any imperfection. And it was so painful for me to even acknowledge that I really couldn't even look at the mistake and learn from it because I was so mortified just for myself. Yeah. Let alone what other people would think. I couldn't even get to that. I just couldn't even believe that I was not perfect. Even if I was doing a thing I'd never done before, how could I even know what I was doing? I couldn't face it. And then this process of shifting, and then I went through a phase of calling myself a recovering perfectionist, and then getting to a point through that. And part of the recovering perfectionist phase was, I can make mistakes and not beat myself up about it. Yeah. And then now, and I can learn from them. And I now feel most sort of set in this adaptive perfectionist phase where I acknowledge, yeah, I'm just naturally a perfectionist. I aim for the absolute top. And that's okay. That's part of who I am, as long as I do it in a way that is aligned with a growth mindset.
Absolutely. And I think it was reading that book that really helped me lean into this idea of yes, I have high expectations for myself, and that's okay. Yes, I'm ambitious, and that's okay. And it's not even just okay. It makes me who I am and is why I've reached this level of success in my career. And it helps me not downplay that success. And I think, both can be true because in a lot of ways, what has been freeing for me is realizing, in a lot of ways, I'm a dime a dozen. I'm pretty average. If I left the firm today, someone could step in and take my work, right? And there's some freedom in that, while also saying, but because I've embraced that ambition, I have achieved, and I don't need to downplay that. While also I think giving myself permission to be a perfectionist that makes mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think sometimes it's reminding myself that the grace I extend other people, I get to also extend to myself when I make a mistake, when I disappoint someone. Because otherwise I get in that cycle of I'm disappointing everyone, I'm failing at everything, I'm not good enough for anyone. And it is that idea of recognizing the maladaptive perfectionist that's saying that to me and saying, oh, no, you can rewire that a little bit and give yourself the space and grace that you offer to everyone else.
So it sounds like this is what led to the naming of your podcast,
Yes.
The Grace Period, which is, it's phenomenal to have, to be able, for people to be able to listen to these snapshots of your experiences and insights and kind of tips and tricks and tactics for being a high achieving perfectionist who does make mistakes and experiences anxiety. And you've spoken also about, having low mood and you've gone through burnout, and you talk very openly about it, which is amazing and we need so much more of. When you started, so you mentioned when you joined BigLaw, you kind of had a mission of, I am going to be my authentic self. And I know you also have a mission statement. Did that recognition of, I just have to be purely me, help you to show up so kind of vocally when you started to realize what you were experiencing, and once you realized you weren't alone? Was it easy for you to start just, like, what was the shift from, okay, I don't tell anybody about these things, and now I have a podcast and I post on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
How did you go from no one can ever know to let me tell everyone?
So it was kind of like the idea of asking for help. I started talking about it on a small scale. The feedback was always positive, so it grew from there. So when I was thinking about leaving my first firm, I took an online class on leveraging LinkedIn. I had not done much with my LinkedIn profile up to that point. Took this webinar, updated my profile, made sure it aligned with whatever was modern at the time in 2020. So this was all in the pandemic, which that would probably be a whole nother podcast about how that exacerbated my mental health struggles.
We can do a part 2.
But at that time, I was also the incoming president of the Wisconsin Young Lawyers Division. And you're supposed to have sort of a theme or idea when you're in that role. And I don't know, I was just like, mine's going to be mental health and well-being. I'm going to talk about it at every single one of our board meetings. Through that, one of our state's biggest malpractice insurance carriers is a huge supporter of the Young Lawyers Division. He was like, well, let's do a CLE on this. So we did a CLE on mindfulness in the law. Like, more people attended to that than I ever thought was possible. The feedback was great. So I was like, there's something here. And through that work, I got tapped to be on the Wisconsin Task Force for Lawyer Wellbeing. So all that work, plus starting to follow people on LinkedIn who are using LinkedIn like a blog, it's like, oh, I could do that. And I started sharing what we were doing on the Wisconsin Task Force for Lawyer Wellbeing and why that was important to me and how it applied to big law and private practice. And the feedback immediately was positive. Not engaging on my posts, but in direct messages and when I would run into people in real life, every single interaction was, thank you for saying that. Keep doing it. And so I did. And I always imagined on my shoulder that curmudgeon-y, hierarchical, traditional big law partner who doesn't think we should talk about these things. I have them in mind. I have my firm's, professionalism, my ethical things. I have all of that in mind when I post. I'm very mindful of that. And it truly took off. And yes, some people say it's brave. I have a hard time embracing that word because I don't feel brave. I feel like myself. I know no other way to be at this point. And to what you said when we first hopped on the call today, if one other person doesn't feel alone, it's worth it to me.
It's totally worth it. And to be honest, it can even save lives. And you never know who you're impacting. And I'm sure you've had the same experience of, so many people, you don't even realize who's looking at your posts. People don't necessarily hit a react button, the likes or whatever, or comment. Sometimes they'll send a DM. There are people who I've learned recently have been following me for years and are so impacted, and I had no idea.
No idea.
No idea. It's just incredible. And, the recognizing that you're not alone in something just starts to open up so many doors. And with, the impact on our industry with mental health and physical health and emotional health and all of the things, and addiction, we just have to keep the conversations going and opening up, making it easier for people to find their people.
Absolutely.
Can have such a tremendous impact.
Absolutely. And, I feel a little bit of responsibility in the sense that Gen Z is going to bust this all wide open. They're not going to put up with some of the old school stuff that us elder millennials and Gen X have put up with. And at the same time, my messaging to older Gen X and younger boomers who are still in the workforce is millennials have been told almost our whole lives that we're entitled and we don't want to work hard. That is false for a lot of us. You don't join a big firm. You don't go to law school because you don't want to work hard. I want to achieve a lot of the same things they've achieved. It's just going to look differently. And that's okay. And we're not going to retain talent if we don't make at least some room for that, while at the same time telling the younger generations, you are going to have to do some things that you don't want to do if your goal is to make partner, lead a company, be a general counsel. But there are ways to work within this system and maintain some sense of authenticity and shared humanity and find that success. And I recently realized, this idea that the successful people are all doing it the same way and there's one way is a complete myth. My firm has 1,100 plus attorneys. The idea that we're all doing it the same way is ridiculous, right? So there is space to work within these boundaries, work within these expectations in a way that feels genuine to you and is sustainable. And I don't have kids. I'm very much in the minority of people that don't have kids as a partner in big firms. And so I try to say that I'm always connecting, especially young women, with female partners who have children. Find people who are living a life that you think you want to live and ask them, how are you doing it? How are you managing it? How would you do it differently? How can I learn from you? And most people are willing to share.
What kind of boundaries do you set? And then which ones are you actually able to maintain most easily?
Yeah.
And which ones are harder? And how do you manage that?
My husband would tell you I have no boundaries around work. I will say the best one I do is sleep. I'm extremely serious about getting at least 8 hours of sleep every night whenever possible and more. And so I go to bed very early most nights. And I'm honest and candid about that with people. So that they're not surprised if they're not hearing from me, at 8:30, which a lot of people think is a reasonable time. And so sleeping is a boundary I'm able to keep. Otherwise, I'm horrible at them. I'm a compulsive email checker. I'm compulsively responsive. Some of that's type A. Some of that's just who I am and who I know to be. But I've learned over time to set more internal boundaries. So I post a lot about the billable hour and how I'm meticulous about tracking where I stand against my billable hour requirement and part of that is so that
Is that you or me?
I don't know. I don't know where it's coming from. Part of that is so I can have a boundary around, like, if it's slow, if all my tasks and to-do lists are set up, and in order, I can walk away. And I'm trying to get better about blocking off time for vacations, but for now, the other than sleep, the best boundary I have is learning when I can walk away and take a nap, go for a walk, hang out with my dogs, go to our lake house up north for a time. Those are the kind of boundaries I try to stick to and model. So, like, this year is my first year being like the leader of a trial team. And we had 20 depositions in about a month, and several associates were just critical in helping me get through that and managing that. And there were times where I said to them, okay, I'm leaving early today. I'm not taking my computer home or back to the hotel. Here's how to reach me. But I model that for them so that they can then give themselves permission to do those same types of things. Like, even if it's an extra hour to yourself that day, if everything's tidied up, if everything can wait until tomorrow or 2 hours from now, that boundary around giving myself permission is one I've really learned to hold. Otherwise, I'm always telling associates, don't be like me. Like, and it's hard because you are expected to be responsive. I think about it as being reasonably responsive. When a matter requires you to be constantly checking your email and when things are calmer and you can walk away. So learning to trust that instinct is helpful.
How have you learned to have these kinds of difficult conversations, and difficult because they're not often the norm, and to have them with your bosses and people who are, you're looking up to, and here you are saying, I am setting these boundaries. I'm not going to be available right now. I know you expect me to be because that's how the rest of you work, but for me to perform at my best, I can't do that. You're just going to have to be okay. You're just going to have to accept that.
So a couple things. In most work environments, not all of them, and there's exceptions and outliers everywhere, most attorneys that you report to and who they want to treat you like an adult, and they don't want to micromanage you, and they don't want to know when you're online and offline. They just want to know that you're going to answer in a reasonable time, take care of things, and move things forward. So sometimes you don't have to have that conversation, but what that requires is a level of attention and work ethic up front. So you build that reputation and that credibility and that trust so that you're not having to tell them all of those things. 2, I learned from my struggles at my first firm around asking for help, that kind of concept, that there are partners who I think I want to work with, and 9 out of 10 of them are going to be real human beings willing to have these conversations with me. So now I have those conversations with mentors. When I'm struggling, I talk to them. I ask them what it's like for them. I ask them how they handled it. And I look for those people, and those are the people that are willing to have that conversation are who I go back to for new work over and over and over again. So you start to shape your career in that way. And I'm confident that there are partners at my first firm who I was terrified to talk to who would have welcomed it. And I regret not talking to them about it in those early days, because it strengthens your relationship. It makes them view you as a human, and you grow stronger and more comfortable at work because of it.
Can you talk about the tools that you've integrated into your life just take care of yourself so that you both can just show up, kind of at a decent plus maintenance point every day. And then the things that you add in when you know you're about to enter into or already in an extra stressful period.
Sure. And I love that you said the word tools, because it really is about having a toolbox. And every single one of our toolboxes is going to have a different variation of tools. So if you hear me say something like I talked about headspace and meditation, go try it. You might hate it. That's fine. Now you know. If you love it, you can make it your own and grow it into whatever you need it to be and put it in your toolbox. So meditation is one, therapy's another, sleep is another. Those are the ones I come back to most consistently. I think having a hobby outside of work that has nothing to do with work is incredibly important. For me, that is tennis. It's also recently become reading for fun. And I'm dabbling in learning how to do watercolor painting. I mean, it's ridiculous if I showed you what I paint. I love just drawing straight lines mindlessly with different colors.
That can be a form of meditation.
Right. But it has nothing to do with work. That's important. I love getting facials and massages, so I try to do that once a month. We have a lake house up north. I've started going up there more and more. Even if I work remotely from there, it takes me out of sort of my normal routine and gives me a change of scenery. Yeah, those are some. And I just can't emphasize enough that you have to have a set of options and tools to support you when it's stressful, that you build a habit you know how to use. And maybe you're not perfect about it. I'm not. I don't do my morning routine every day, but I can come back to it when I am stressed. And that's what everyone needs.
So we talked about, the anxiety and you've had low mood. We didn't really get into, you really did experience some very severe burnout. Did these tools, so what helped you get out of that really severe phase? Let's start there. And then are these tools, do you find them effective? Do you feel that they're effective for helping you not go back there again?
Yes. So that's exactly spot on. Now I have a bunch of tools that help me avoid reaching that really critical burnout stage. Or especially through meditation, learning to recognize the signs when I am feeling burnout and having the tools to talk about it and prevent me from getting to that stage. Getting over burnout, it took forever. I mean, I would say in some ways, some of my anxiety and stressors is a response and a fear from going back there, right? As a trigger. So I have to be careful sometimes talking to other people who are in the throes of burnout or getting there, because it triggers those anxieties in me because I so deeply relate. I'll be honest, changing firms helped me, it helped me have a fresh start, helped me figure out what was really important to me and what mattered to me in a firm and recalibrate how I was going to act going forward. And talking to people, being open about it and knowing that I wasn't alone, because it is shocking how helpful it is to have someone who you admire say to you, me too. I've been there and this is what it looked like for me. And I don't take those conversations for granted. And again, that's what I try to model for other people.
When you were in that really severe burnout phase, I remember seeing you, I think, in a post reference that one of, I guess maybe in hindsight, an indication that that's what you were dealing with was you would have this thought of, well, if I were to get in a car accident, at least I could rest. I could have a break.
Yeah.
Did you understand at the time what that kind of thought meant?
I had no clue. And that is an example I give when in any moment when burnout comes up and in all my keynote talks on this topic. And I remember in a one-on-one conversation with a friend explaining that or saying it out loud, and his light bulb moment of like, that's not normal. Like, I mean, it is normal, but it's not healthy, right?
Right.
And in every room when I speak that, you see people nod, you see their eyebrows raise, you see them think, yeah, I've been there. I had no clue that wasn't healthy. Therapy helped me with that for sure. Talking to my husband about it, who does not run anxious, like intellectually, he can understand what I'm going through, but he physically, psychologically doesn't experience it the same way I do. Having him say to me, like, I don't think that's right. You know,
The goal here.
yeah, was helpful. And again, that's an example of something else. I just try to share it so that people know, like, something's going on at that point. If you're having those thoughts, again, they're normal, but they're not healthy. And you probably need to do some self reflection and either do it yourself or get some help to try to move through it.
Anything else you want to share about your shift from, I mean, anything that we've talked about, but, you know, including the shift from not even knowing how not okay you were to knowing it, and now being in this place where you've got these tools and you have this tremendous platform where people really look to you as just a model of what a lawyer in big law can look like, and how you can really bring your humanity into work, do really, really good work at a high level, and also care for yourself.
Yeah. I hope people hear that it is possible. Most people hit a bump or a fork in the road in big law where they think, is this for me long term? And for some people, it's not. And there's a ton of reasons for that. And that's okay. If you're like me and you like being a big law attorney, you like being a corporate attorney, and you hit that crossroads, I hope you hear that there are options and that there are ways to stay in it and be yourself and get help and build a sustainable career that feels authentic and true to you, even while you're having to behave and act within these expectations and boundaries and this known system. And it is possible, and you have those options, and it won't necessarily look anything like how I've done it, but you have permission to figure out what that looks like for you, and you will be a better attorney, a better associate, a better service provider to your clients when you start making that part of your practice.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled that we were able to have this conversation. I'm so delighted to know you, and just really grateful that you're out there sharing everything that you do, and providing such an incredible example of, again, all how to be yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was an honor and pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got a ton of value from this conversation, and that you will check out the links in the description to learn more about the guest and the Wellness Esquire. And I hope you take even just 1 minute to do something for yourself today. Maybe right now, drink more water, say no, call a friend, do something that makes you happy, have a 30-second dance party, find something to make you laugh. Also, be sure to subscribe and send the podcast to a colleague. And if we're not yet connected on LinkedIn, please fix that. I'd love to know you. See you next time.